Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about when we get into the classroom and you're going to give some feedback and kind of help them with item 3. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your plan is?
Yeah, definitely. We did have an engagement piece at the beginning of the lesson for each of the groups where the students, I elicited from them, the standard equation format, the y equals mx plus b. And I think I really need to go back to that, but see if we can talk more about not just what is the format and not just where do we plug in numbers, because I really hate that concept of plugging in numbers. They don't necessarily understand what their answer means when they plug them in. So really discussing what each part of the equation represents. So going back to that concept of where is the dependent variable, where is the independent variable, why is there an equal sign after y? What does the rest of that mean? Well, that's what you're trying to find. Why you're trying to find the cost. So the cost is equal to what?
Exactly.
And then, where are we identifying the rates from? Is there a rate in the problems? Where does rate go? How do you know where it goes?
Right.
Why do you multiply it by something and not add it or divide it or subtract it? So I'm hoping that we can use some, pair shares, some group conversations.
I think you said you were going to pull some anchor papers from a class that had done this before.
Right, so I do have about 5 different responses to one of the questions on the back that really goes into, it's number 5, that gives different student responses but aren't from these specific papers, because I don't want anyone to say, hey, that's mine, either in a positive or a negative way. When I do this, if I hadn't had other samples, I always pull from a different period. So if I'm in period 3, I might pull from 2 or 4, just to make sure that everyone's comfortable, because I don't want anyone to feel out of place. Sometimes even the students who got it completely correct are not comfortable being put on the spot with their correct answer. I would love it when we get to a point where everyone is very proud of how well they're doing in math and overall in school, but especially with middle school students, that's not always the case. So we want to make sure that we create that classroom dynamic where everyone's comfortable. All right, today I am back in your class because I want to share with you some really positive things I saw from your work, as well as some things I learned about what we can do a better job of going over so that you have a really good understanding of the tasks and can complete those tasks successfully. So I have your task back up on the screen. I know it's been a little while since you've seen it and you've had some holiday vacation, so it may not be very, very fresh in your mind, but it was called Consumer Sense, and it was about internet data usage and determining which plan worked best for the people in our problem, and maybe got you thinking about what plan might work best for you if you were getting a new phone or tablet or iPad for the holidays. Number 3, as I went through your work, I realized was really important to understand in order to do pretty much all of the problems. Because number 3 is where you put together that equation where you use the rest of the numbers. And I noticed that some people weren't quite sure how to use that y equals mx plus b equation. Raise your hand if you remember this y equals mx plus b being up on the board when we did it the first time. We did a little bit of work as a group before we started the task, and you guys told me that that was something that you had been using for this semester. Raise your hand if you don't necessarily remember it being on the board, but you remember seeing it with Mr. Grassi. If that's something that you're like, yeah, I've worked with that. All right. So y equals mx plus is not new to you, but I definitely saw some areas where you were a little bit confused on how to use it with a word problem or something that required you to put them in different places. How would I get x from a type of problem like we had up here? Let's look at the minute plan. Pay 24 cents each minute. Is there a way I can take that information and make an equation for the minute plan? That was the first thing we needed to do for number 3. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 places the 24 could go. But we don't want to just plug it in anywhere, because the concept of plugging it in isn't really helping us, right? We could put it 4 places. What we really need to understand is I'm going to put it here or here because blank, because it is a blank. And I really want to draw your attention to the concept of dependent and independent variables. Thumbs up if that sounds familiar, thumbs down if you've never heard those terms before. But I also really wanted to look at 5 and 6 because they were actually a little bit more difficult, but I saw some really good answers. All right, I'm going to show you 5 responses that I saw not from this class, so no one has to worry that this is their own paper. But we are going to look at 5 successful answers for people who either showed the math or maybe didn't show the math, but I could see what you were thinking. So I really tried to give you credit every time I could understand your rationale and your justification. So student A, again not from this class, said the better plan for Carlos would have been the monthly plan because he doesn't use his tablet that often. So we don't know how much he does use it, but he doesn't go over 1,000, so we're assuming monthly is better for him. Did they show me any math to prove that? Just based on what I wrote right there. If you can't see their paper, does it look like they used math to justify their answer?
No.
Not really. And did I ask you to?
Yes.
Yes. So, does student A have correct thinking?
No.
Yeah. He does have correct thinking. I think he was thinking the right thing, but he didn't convince me. He didn't make an argument where I'm like, yeah, I totally understand every single reason you think that. All right, student B, the monthly plan because that gives Carlos a way better deal. That's another good concept too, right? A better deal. Which plan gives you the better deal? It's really a different way of saying something similar to student A. Now let's look at student C and see if we can see where kind of that jump was in terms of the answers I got. Because I think student C is really starting to get to where I'm really hoping that we can all go together when we have a chance to look at our work. Who wants to read student C's response? I've done a lot of talking. You want to read student C's response? Okay.
The monthly plan, because if the maximum number of minutes was 1,000, the 12 cents times 1,000 only equals $120. Added $36, and he only spends a maximum of $156 a month.
And how much does the unlimited plan cost again? 160. So we have 160 for unlimited, and then how much does the monthly cost? 156. Which one's cheaper? Which one's the better deal?
Monthly plan.
Monthly. Is it a huge difference?
Sort of.
156, 160. How many dollars?
Four, but like that's 100 pennies.
100 pennies times $4 is 400 pennies. So if you looked at it in pennies, it might seem a little bit larger. But $4, it's cheaper, but not that much cheaper. Student D had a similar response, but they included one extra detail. What's the extra detail that student D included? And I think that you did this too on your paper. What did they include?
What the price was for the minute plan.
Okay, so they justified their answer with math, saying that the monthly plan was cheaper, but then they also referenced the minute plan, saying why it was not a good, and why wasn't it good?
It was more expensive.
More expensive, a little bit or a lot?
A lot.
A lot more expensive. So it says right here, the minute plan would have been $240 compared to $160 for unlimited and $154 for monthly. So that's a pretty big gap, right? 160 to 240. That's not $4, that's $80. So a lot bigger. I'm gonna hand back your papers and we're gonna have a little bit of time to work in our groups to look at problems 3, 5, and 6. It's not that the other problems don't matter, but that's really where I saw an opportunity for you guys to have an ongoing conversation and see what did you do well. First, I want everyone to get their paper back and say, what was I successful on? What did I clearly understand? And then look at areas where maybe you could have given more information or done a little bit more justification with math. So you're gonna have an opportunity to improve on these. Does that sound good? All right.